For years and years, we've heard women talk about my body, my choice, saying that men should have no opinion on the topic of abortion or women's rights or anything concerning their bodies and what they do with it. And I can understand where they're coming from because when they do make a decision, they'll have to deal with the consequences because it is their body. So if it's positive or negative, they have to worry about getting medication, surgery, living with the pain, whether or not it's short term or long term suffering or illness that they got to deal with regarding their body. So it's not like I don't understand where they're coming from when they say my body, my choice. My whole issue is they should be the only ones making the decision on whether or not to keep a child or not in the case of, abortion. They completely ignore the fact that the man may have some emotional tie to that potential baby that she's carrying. They completely ignore the fact that a man will have to take care of the child if she decides to keep it and the man doesn't want it. On both sides of that scenario, the man doesn't have a choice in what happens. So it's weird to me, or I guess ironic, how much we hear about my body, my choice, but it's only for the women. It's not for the men. And it goes just beyond my body, my choice for men because, of course, it's not our bodies on the line, but it is our money on the line. If that woman decides to keep that child and the man doesn't want it, he has no choice but to provide child support or stay in that child's life and be a family, even if he doesn't want that. That man is forced to financially support the child and her if they stay together. But even so, depending on the circumstance, how much money that man makes, like some athletes, some celebrities, businessmen, musicians, such and so forth, they may end up having to pay more child support than it even takes to raise a child. Someone beginning like 5,000, 10,000 plus a month just to get child support from their baby's father. It really makes no sense, and I really think if we would tackle that issue of child support and men not having a choice at all when it comes to children, and whether or not a woman decides to keep the child, and whether or not we have to support the woman and the child once she gives birth, I really feel like you would see a lot more men willing to march and support women's rights because it's not just about women, it's about men too. And when you put something in that somebody can, gain something from, or even the playing field in another area, more people are willing to negotiate and come to the playing field or come to the table to decide on what works for everybody. You can't just act like it's just one person on one side that be affected. I understand why you say my body, my choice. But men, our finances and our future and our legacy is on the line. If you decide to have that child and the man doesn't want it, he has no choice but to pay that child support. And he has to take that money out of his wallet every single day to provide for a child he didn't want. But since you, the woman, decide that you want to keep it, regardless of what that man feels or decides or wants, now he's forced to do it. And I don't see much women marching about that, protesting about that. They just much rather protest about having the right to an abortion. They don't want to protest about the right of a man to decide or have a say on whether or not that woman has an abortion, or whether or not that man has a choice in staying the woman and the child's life after she decides to keep the child. I think Ram fully support the idea of a man signing his rights away to the children, and that way he doesn't have to pay child support for a woman if she decides to keep it. If you're a grown woman and you're so mature and smart and this, that, and the other and so strong and empowered, and you feel like you can just have a child without support of a man or just ignore what a man wants in that situation when it affects both of you, then you woman enough to go and be a single mother without any child support. You can't just ignore what a man says in his opinion and then expect to get some support behind it after anyway. Like, it's so arrogant to me that you think you could just ignore the fact that a man doesn't want a child and then demand money from him and be so arrogant enough to say that you deserve it or it's owed to you. You're owed nothing because that child wasn't wanted to begin with, but you're so entitled that you think you can just dictate that and change that man's life because of what happened. You could say if you ain't want to have a child, he shouldn't have laid with you. But you don't say that when a woman decide to get an abortion. I'm sure people who are pro-life will say, if you didn't want a child, you shouldn't have laid down and had sex. Oh, but you don't like it when they say that. You don't want that argument to be used when it's against a man that you want to get money out of. Yeah, I think that's crazy. It's ridiculous. Like, men aren't just made to be walked over and be just going along with anything these women say just because it makes them feel good or they think they're right. Half of them can't even fully explain why they think the way they do unless there's some type of emotional thing behind it. There's usually no logic. It's I feel this way and I want you to do something because I feel this way. Well, newsflash, I don't give a fuck how you feel. I'm not finna be put in a bad situation or advocate for something that clearly screws me over because it makes you happy. I don't know who you think you are, where you think our lives are so meaningless that we can just completely uproot them or change them because of how you feel, but that isn't reality. If you want to be a grown woman and decide to have sex and you decide to keep that child, knowing damn well that man doesn't want it, then you should be a grown ass woman and take care of it by yourself. Don't go begging to the same man you felt wasn't worth listening to when he said he didn't want it. You was cool ignoring him then and saying my body, my choice then, but now he's a lowlife and a piece of shit because he says my money, my choice. That's the equivalent, because that's the only thing we really have. We can't force you to get an abortion. If we do, we're going to prison. We can't force you to think the way we think or force you to do what we want, but we can't control what we do and what we spend our money on or what we give our time to. So I fully support the idea of women having the choice to do what they want with their bodies in terms of abortion, but that's only if men have the choice to decide if they don't want to be in a child's life or your life, and they can sign their rights away. And once they sign their rights away to that child, they can't come back in that child's life unless the child wills it to be after they're 18 or of an age where they're mentally competent enough to say I want their father back in their life. The man can't just jump in and out when it's most convenient for him, because it's not good for the child. And that's what truly matters. Not what you feel or what you deserve is what's best for the child. So I fully support abortion rights for women, but I also support men being able to sign away their rights and not have to take care of a child or a woman that they don't want to. It's your boy Logos, and I'll talk to y'all next time.